and welcome to the podcast for Reading for Style. Remember, just as we spoke about narrative and we spoke about point of view, we spoke about character development and presentation, that style is another component for talking about the form and content of literature. Style is the method of how speakers or writers say whatever it is that they want to say. Style is one of those more ephemeral qualities of literature in that it is traditionally explored by looking at the rhetorical situation and aim, i.e., is this a text that is making an argument? Is it explaining something? Is it describing? Is it comparing? Is it contrasting? What is the rhetorical mode, and what is the situation or aim proposed by this text? Most fiction that we read is kind of I guess you'd say pursuant upon the idea that it's describing something. But there are, of course, the literatures that we read that do make a statement and do seem to use the rhetorical structure to provide a sense of purpose or understanding to the text. Another way that we can explore style is to look at the diction and choice of words in a text. We know that when something is more grandiloquent, that we're looking at a text that's going to be possibly written in a different manner than something that is more plain spoken or direct. So diction and choice of words plays heavily into how style is expressed in a text. We can also look at the type of sentence structure and syntax. With Faulkner, in particular, you can see how the style of the sentence and the syntax and the diction used is kind of put forth to express an idea about the people and the actions in the story. Now, if we take that same kind of idea and we try to apply it to, let's say, the short story by F. Scott Fitzgerald, we're going to see a difference in sentence structure and syntax that it produces a different type of feeling about the literature. And of course, figurative language, which comes into play with metaphors, similes, hyperbole, different types of tropes that we use. Now, of course, since everything we've learned goes back to the ancient Greeks, the three main styles, according to Cicero, who, like Aristotle and Plato, proposed many different ways of looking at the world in literature. There are three main styles. There's the high or the grand, the middle or the mean, and the low or the plain. Now, the high or the grand that we've read, probably I'd say the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock is a high or grand style. The middle or the mean could be The Emperor of Ice Cream by Wallace Stevens. It's very forthright and engaging, but at the same time, it's a little bit elevated and not quite as low or plain. Now, the lower plain style, we could basically possibly suggest that Chickamauga by Ambrose Bierce is very much a low or plain style. That doesn't mean that it's not a great piece of literature, it just means that it is tailored as far as sentence structure, language, diction, and rhetorical aim at a different purpose than the high or the grand. There are two main prose style distinctions. There, of course, is the paratactic, which we briefly talked about last week, the iceberg theory, and in this way, as far as style goes, there's no expression of connections between sentences. The reader makes the inference between what's being said and what they believe, the reader believes, is happening or being described. The hypotactic is when the writer provides temporal, causal, logical, syntactic relations in the sentence structure. A lot of these words like when and then and if and because clue us in and guide us to see what is truly going on, and this is a much more focused style than the paratactic. Now, there's some questions that we can ask in relation to style. When we're reading, we should ask ourselves, what can be known from this text? What can be put into words? What is the relationship between thought and language in this text? Who is the writer addressing and why? What is the implied relationship between the reader and the writer? And what are the implied conditions of discourse? Now, in reference to the Fitzgerald story, what can be known? Well, what can be known is basically the thoughts that are connected to the main character, the main protagonist, Charlie or Charles. What can be put into words? Well, a lot of description can go into place. A little bit of the free and indirect discourse will tell us what Charlie is thinking. but we can't get a full fleshed out point of view from all the characters, so we can only focus on Charles. The relationship between thought and language in the piece is very much a loose connection. We are given certain insight into Charlie's thoughts, but not complete insight into everyone else's thoughts. The writer appears to be addressing a reader that is of the same mind as he is, someone who understands the faults and foibles of humanity. The relationship between the reader and the writer. Now this is a tricky one. Would we say that it is one of confidant and friend, or would it say that we are put in the placement of judging Charles? Are we the judge and he is the accused? And in that vein, what conditions do we bring to the text? Do we bring the judgmental perspective, or do we bring a confidant type kind of perspective to it? There are many other ways to look at style. However, these are some standard policies that you can kind of use as we kind of continue to develop our understanding of literature. If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to contact me.